Hello everyone and welcome to Uncharted Parenting, a podcast brought to you by Encounter Youth. Parenting is one wild adventure. It's full of twists, turns, and plenty of uncharted territory. Don't worry, you're not navigating it alone. We're here with you. Each episode here on the pod, we dive into real conversations, expert insights from some amazing professionals from various fields, and honest stories to help you find your way in this parenting journey. I'm your host, Louis, the Education and Parent Coordinator at Encounter Youth. Before joining the team here, I enjoyed 9 years serving as a police officer in the South Australian Police. But most importantly, I'm the proud dad of 2 boys. Welcome to Uncharted Parenting because, let's be honest, no one really has a map for this journey. Let's dive in. Okay, so welcome to another episode of Uncharted Parenting. It's really great to have some amazing guests on the show, and today we've got another special guest in Jonny Shannon. So Jonny, thank you so much for joining me today, mate.
Mate, thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you. And look, Jonny, the more and more I sort of delved into your story and your background, mate, it's honestly an incredible one from the very beginning to sort of where it is now. And honestly, when I deep dived into it all, and I found it more astonishing from, you've developed an app that's now listed on the ASX and dedicating yourself now to youth work, becoming a dad yourself to 2 girls, and also, on a day-to-day basis, empowering and equipping young people and educators, parents with, those practical tools to help them get through what this crazy ride of life really is, mate. So Jonny, thank you for having us.
Mate, thanks again. Even what you were saying before with the 2 kids, you feel like a full-time parent, part-time worker.
Yeah, yeah, you really do. Honestly, I sometimes think I come to work for a break.
Mate, on the money. 100%.
Yeah. So, Jonny, your journey is a big one. It's a interesting one. And do you mind just sharing a little bit with us just about your journey, sort of where it started and sort of where you're at now with that?
Yeah, sure thing, mate. So, at the moment, I've got a very cool job. Basically every day I get to jump into my car, drive to a new high school and talk about a whole bunch of different topics. Like anything from sex and relationships, drugs and alcohol, phobias, fears, addictions, compulsions, mental health. My biggest one by far at the moment is bullying and cyber safety. One thing I love about my job is that I get to travel a lot. Like over the last 15 years, I've been all around Australia over 178 times. Like every place you can think of. I've been to Tasmania, heaps of places. So great job. I didn't always have that job though. Like straight out of high school, I jumped into the New Zealand military.
Yep.
Yes, New Zealand has a military. I can see your face. Halfway I wish. Enjoyed that. I jumped into Vodafone and then just ended up working myself up into their bullying division and their anti-bullying division, and then insurance company. And then me and 3 of my mates got together and created the app PushPay, which helps. So while it's giving out to charities and churches, and that ended up doing really well with just over 1.5 billion. I walked away with my chunk of change and just rededicated my life to speaking full time. Been speaking ever since. The only time I've had a break is during COVID, and I started a company called Gamify, which has ended up doing really well, and another company called Post Harvest Technologies. And COVID went, been and gone, and I'm back to speaking again. So yeah, just all round, but always to do with technologies, and have always had like a foot in the youth work side of things.
Yeah. Is there something, Jonny, that really was your driving force to, go into that youth work side of things? Is there, obviously there's a big difference between, being in the technology sector to then, and also it being in the military as well, to then moving into, youth work. So how did that come about, mate?
Yeah, great question. Man, probably from a whole bunch of different angles. Look, a big turning point for me was going to high school, got bullied a heck of a lot, ended up fighting back way too much and getting expelled, and then moving to another school who politely asked me to leave. So that wasn't getting expelled. It was a lot nicer.
Yeah.
Just, hey, please don't come back.
Yep.
And it wasn't until my last year of high school that the principal, Rangitoto College, largest school in the Southern Hemisphere, 3,700 students, got me aside and said I had to sign a piece of paper saying that I wouldn't fight and I wouldn't wag school. So I signed this piece of paper, and part of the condition was that I had to see a school counsellor. And so when I saw the school counsellor, she helped me through just a lot of stuff. And I remember thinking, hey, she's just changed my life. I'd love to one day give back to schools and teach some of the stuff that she taught me to other people.
it, it's an incredible thing, isn't it, to sort of give back. And there's a lot of probably counsellors and youth workers, that are out there that are doing some incredible work that we never really hear about. And so it's great
Oh,
to
mate.
hear that. It's great to hear that it's had such an impact on your life and sort of changed the way that you went about things. So
Yeah, appreciate that, mate. I couldn't agree more. I think they're the most, some of the most beneficial people in the whole school, if not the whole of society, is those youth workers and people that help other kids when they're going through a hard time. I mean, look at things like Kids Helpline. We did some work with them many, many years ago, but out of the five that I worked with, three of them weren't even paid. Which,
yeah,
I tell young people like, hey, there's people out there that have never met you before, and yet they love you enough to do unpaid work and just listen to what you're going through.
mm.
It's a pretty cool country.
Yeah. We definitely are very blessed in the country that we live in. And Jonny, you mentioned as well just there about the content that you deliver, and
Yeah,
I know you deliver it in primary and high schools. Is that, and
yeah,
also to parent audiences and corporate audiences as well. But you mentioned as well that your most highly sought after presentations right now are in that sort of cyber safety, online bullying area. And I understand that, we're sort of we're going to try and deep dive into this a little bit today, but um, there's obviously lots of factors involved in the online bullying, the online safety. We can talk about sexting, bullying online,
yeah,
so and screen time, gaming, gaming
yeah,
addiction as well. There's
yeah.
so much to unpack there, but can you maybe give us a bit of an insight into sort of how that's going, and sort of maybe come at it from the perspective of maybe like a young person as well? Like what do you think? Because often I find that there's this sometimes disconnect between what my generation or even older and what their parents understand, and then there's the up and coming next generation of youth who are growing up with technology, and their understanding of it is a lot different to what parents is right now.
For sure. Huge, huge disconnect. I mean, you look at even like you talked about screen time before, average student in Australia in high school has 5 to 9 hours a day. But then I reckon the disconnect, even that, when you think about it, is your average parent actually has a little bit more screen time because they're actually at work. So they often have a screen or an iPad and a phone in front of them all at the same time. So
Mm.
there's a strange disconnect between, I think, one of the biggest disconnects is parents thinking kids should be on screens way less, while at the same time being on screens themselves a lot. The other side to that is in a developing brain, it has been proven that too much blue light, too much screen really does stunt growth, affects sleep, affects relationships, just all around. So, yeah, probably one of the biggest disconnects is that kids are growing up with connected devices, and yet at the same time are the most disconnected generation that we've ever had. I mean, case in point, there's a huge study called the National Youth Survey, and it interviewed students three times over the course of their high school, so every year and a half for 5 years.
Mhm.
And they found out in the last about 10 years, the generation that we have now is one of the best generations we've ever had in a whole bunch of different issues. I mean, look, this isn't including COVID because the study stopped about 3 years ago. But at that time, at least,
Mm.
interviewed about over 9,000 students. The only red line, the only thing they found it really difficult with this generation, so, better, less teen pregnancy, less drunk driving, less almost everything. The biggest red line in contrast to any previous generation was lack of connection and loneliness. And I
Okay.
think technology has a big part to play. So even though the kids, they have a lot of friends, often they don't have genuine friendships they spend one-on-one time together with. I think that's probably the biggest disconnection that kids have, that they don't even know how to communicate themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's their norm, right? They're just always grown up that way. It has to be adults to look at them and say, hey, that's actually not normal.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Do you think COVID, Johnny, had a lot to do with that, and how sort
Mm,
of how young people are now building connection?
for sure, for sure. I mean, yeah, I've had one of the biggest jumps, and even the presentations I get is a lot around anxiety, social anxiety, especially. That's been a big jump that's happened over the last couple of years that I've heard from multiple people.
Yeah.
But yeah, just normal social skills, mate. Kids being afraid to call, um, you know, call up. Kids being afraid to say hello to someone new, and not knowing how to. So I think social skills needs to be taught a lot more in high schools to like sort of bring the pendulum back.
Yeah. It's really interesting. A lot of I'm sure if we were to survey a whole bunch of parents, of teenagers probably specifically, they'd probably
Yeah,
all come back to us and say one of the pressing issues is, oh, my teenager's on social media all the time, or,
Yeah.
they're in their room, they slam the door shut and they're online all night.
Yep.
Is there some encouragement, Jonny, that you can give maybe to some parents and how to sort of approach that sort of topic with their young people?
Yeah, mate, great question. Look, I did a lot of work, and I don't even know if I mentioned this before, but I worked at the Parenting Place for about 5-6 years, which is an awesome charity in New Zealand, and that's actually how I got into speaking, working with parents and then kids, and then decided to move to Australia. But one thing we found that was the most effective thing to get kids off screens is to have a mobile phone contract or just a screen contract. If you just type in mobile phone contract on Google, one will come up. If you type my name, mobile phone contract, Jonny Shannon, it will come straight up.
Yep.
And this is just a conversation starter. It's about 10 topics that you talk to your young person about. How much time should we be spending online? Because if you ask, even a young person, and I've done this with, heck, last week I was talking to prep, prior to primary school, so with real young kids. But if you ask even younger kids, hey, 1 year from now, where do you want to be? A lot of them actually have really insightful answers. Like, I asked the audience the other day, hey, 1 year from now, what are some hobbies you'd like to have? What are some things you'd like to do? Write it on a big whiteboard. People say, I'd like to do gymnastics, horse riding, poetry, read these books. Not one answer in a group of hundreds of kids was, I want to play video games or watch TV 5 to 9 hours a night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No one says that. It's just one of those things that naturally ends up happening because you get home, you're tired, you want to blob, the parents might be out.
Yep.
And so I think if you have like a formal contract where you talk to your young person and say, hey, how about we limit it? And maybe you go from 5 to 9 hours a night down to like 2 hours a night. And then you say to your young person, hey, it's not just you, it's us. Because what I found at the Parenting Place time and time again, it's so much easier to negotiate with the young person if they get on board, if the whole family's on board. Like, it's a lot different telling a young person, hey, you're only allowed your phone for 2 hours, versus us as a family only have devices for 2 hours a night. That's far easier to control and to measure. And so that's one big thing, by far is the biggest thing, having the open conversation. You can do it really easily. You can do it over ice cream. I always recommend parents having food and snacks when you're actually talking about, loosen it up a little bit.
Yeah.
That'd be number one. Number two, there's other ways to enforce it. You can do things like shut the Wi-Fi off. There's an app you can get, which is really good. It's called Bark. It's about $50 a year. Last time I checked, last time I got it anyway. And you load it into your kids' phones, and you can actually shut off the Wi-Fi or cellular connection after a certain amount of time. So you can tell them once they get home, GPS tagged, you can only use your phone for 2 hours or your device for 2 hours. Not only that, it tracks all the different social media sites they're on. And the cool thing about Bark is that it's actually, I think it was one of the ex-engineers from Disney and another ex-engineer from Minecraft. End up helping them, but they've created an algorithm that figures out if they're online, is the conversation getting more heavy or more negative? So they can actually alert the parent the moment they're on social media and actually starts turning into bullying or swearing or name calling. So like if you're a parent listening to this and you're gonna get one thing out of this entire interview, I'd say download Bark, just give it a go for a month. Once you've used it, you won't go back.
Okay. That's I'd not heard of that one, Jonny. So that's a really good one. And I'll, people that are listening, I'll leave a link in the episode description on this episode to the mobile phone contract that Jonny just mentioned, and also to the app as well, that app called Bark. That's a really great one. I've not heard of it, Jonny. So that's a really good one. It sounds like really practical as well. So
real practical and easy to use to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Look, on the same line though, I will say, because I always try to hit things from both angles. As a parent, it can be really hard. You've got 2 kids, I've got 2 kids. Yeah. Sometimes they're screaming, and it must just get harder the more kids you have and the older they get. But you want to reset as well. So you want to go check your phone and all the rest of it. But I think have a conversation with your partner. Hey, let's just maybe only use your phones when the kids go to bed, just so you're fully present. But a couple of things to encourage you as a parent. Number one, there's a really big study recently done in New York and the UK where they got schools to not use phones at school or at home. For one study was 21 days, the other one was 32 days.
Yep.
They saw a 44% decrease in behavioral issues. They saw 15% better sleeps. They saw 17% decrease in anxiety. They saw was a 6.2% increase over a month in academic performance.
Wow.
Like they saw all these things, and then both studies at the very end, for some weird reason, and this is after saying 17% less anxiety, for some reason, both of them end up saying, but there's no direct link between mental health and screen use.
It's
Well, so
even though there's that 17% is quite a significant reduction over a short period of time.
mate, I think it's better than some pills people get. 17%.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's what I really liked about what you said about the app called Bark just then, Jonny, as well, was that it sort of protects them from that online bullying aspect as well. So if they're getting those, nasty messages or, those hurtful comments that sort of come up on Facebook or Instagram, all those sort of platforms that we know that happens on, it's sort of going to help with that side of things too.
Yes, it's got to highlight it. Bullying's one of the hardest things because the average kid, when they get bullied online, they don't mention it for a long period of time with the parents. And so sometimes by the time the parent hears about it, they'll give a flagged response like, oh, toughen up, or just hit him back, or something else. But often by the time they've heard about it, it's been going on for so long that the kids, often distraught and very different than the bullying we had when we were at school. I mean, I'm not sure I'm coming up 40, but when I went to school, like, we were just coming out with phones. You could, if you got bullied at school, you got home and your mind had a rest. The bullying happened at school. I didn't get bullied on the bus or at home, but these days kids have phones on them all the time. And it's like that little, that bird, the woodpecker, just slowly gnaws away at you. And most anxiety research has shown us that it's usually not one or two big things. Contrary to popular belief, it's usually not one big trauma event. It's often that really slow nagging for long periods of time, so the mind doesn't have time to reset and rest. Which, again, interesting enough, don't use a phone, get 15% better sleeps.
Yeah, that's a very interesting study. I'd love to actually delve into that a little bit.
It's called the Yonder study. So if you type in like YON, I think it's DR study, or if you just type in locked phones in New York City, or what's the UK one? I'll send you the links. There's a couple of really good snapshots and breakdowns of what happened. But the smart thing that school did in both cases is like what I talked about before. They didn't tell one kid to stop. They had an agreement with all the kids, and in one school's cases with all the parents as well. So you've got everyone on board. So it's not like you're the only kid at school that doesn't have a phone. You're going to a school and no one else has phones. So that's when the genuine connection happens, is when there's a community agreement, which is a big thing that I speak about at schools. I mean, the school I was at last week, we just had a parent night, got everyone on board. Everyone agrees to, we're not having phones at school anymore. You can take them out of the bag to, so your parent knows where to pick you up from. And when you get home, let's have a limit. Let's have 2 hours a night. Or you can reverse it. You can say you can have as much time as you like, little Jimmy, but you have to maintain this score at school, and you have to do 1 or 2 sports. As in, like, you're still getting out there. You're not just spending all your time at home on the phone.
Yeah.
Or screen or whatever.
Yeah, there's some really practical tips there. And I think you mentioned a couple of things in the last couple of minutes there, Jonny, and one of those is that you're 100% right. I'm 30 now, and even, I'm thinking back to my late primary school, maybe. So year 7, year 8, I reckon I got a phone, and it was strictly for, calling mum and dad to come pick me up whenever I needed it. Like, it wasn't, I wasn't scrolling Facebook or, I keep going to Facebook because that's probably the biggest one that's out there. But, I wasn't scrolling apps till in all hours of the night. And it's something that you said was that it is constant. Like, if you are getting bullied, then you're right. It doesn't just stop at school, or it doesn't just stop on the school bus. It's continuing, and to be in that world would be a lot. And you can see why young people, especially teenagers, they've got a lot going on in their lives as it is. And then you add that on top of that, it can be a lot for them.
100%, mate. And it's that wearing down after a while. And the other thing is, there's a lot of students that are never taught, what to do about bullying. I tell you what, I'm going to take it one step back and just say this, because it just come into my head regarding the screen time before we jump back onto the bullying thing. As I said, I kind of had it from both angles. If you're a parent, I've got this thing that me and my mate at work sort of remind each other on, is that by the time your child is 12 years old, you would have spent 75% of your time that you ever had with your child will be before they're 12.
Wow.
90% will be by the time they're 18. So if your kid comes home and they're watching, TV too much or computer games too much or on their phone or whatever, and you're getting home and that's just becoming a substitute because, it's just an easy time filler while you do something else. As a parent, maybe just remind yourself, like, this is not, it's not a long time. Like by the time they're 18, you got to see them every second week on average. And so cherish the time you're happy with kids now. Take them outside, go for a picnic, make some memories. If you're going to watch a movie, watch it all together, have a movie night. Actually make it something special. Don't just let the time go by. And that's why I love things like Bark or Wi-Fi timers that just, after 2 hours they shut off and heck, that time went by so fast. Like, yeah, so's your life. Like, that's just a chunk. But just jump on the bullying side of things, mate. Like, most students are not taught, one, resilience, and two, what to do in the case that they get insulted or belittled. And a lot of people just revert back to fight and flight or freeze. And so I think the schooling system hasn't done the greatest job at teaching people how to resolve conflict. You got students coming home being miserable, can't sleep, going through anxiety. Someone like me gets called up to go to do a whole bullying presentation. But you, as a parent, number one, you need to ideally have a consistent time with your kids so you can figure out if they're going up or down. One of the things we used to teach at the parenting place was like, try to have dinner at least one night a week, at least. And this is probably my ADHD kicking in because I'm going on tangents. But there's a quick study behind that. There's a study done in 1989 with the Fortune 500 companies. And they found out the only two things that the CEOs of the top Fortune 500 companies had in common, on average, the only two common denominators that were like skyrocketed through the study was nearly all of them played chess and nearly all of them came from families where they had consistent dinner times.
Okay.
They said psychologically, chess people, they think 10 moves ahead. And then psychologically, if they came home from school, if they had a bad day, you come home from school, you had a set dinner time, everything was normal, everything was peaceful. You could come back, reset, debrief. And so I'd encourage you as a parent, if you have kids, teenage kids, one of the best things you can do is have that consistent dinner time. And then if you really want to supercharge that dinner time to build real good emotional resilience and positive psychology into your child, is to ask them a consistent, and I call it the best thing and the worst thing, which you say at the start of the day, this is the best thing that happened to me today. This is the worst thing that happened to me today. What's your best and worst thing?
Yeah.
And as a parent, you can preempt the conversation, especially if they're going through bullying, by saying something along the lines of, my mate Brad at work is really annoying and kept on calling me names today or suggesting that, X, Y, Z. And you say, so how I handled that situation was, I said, respectfully, I don't appreciate when people talk to me that way. Can we please, talk this through further? And then so you're inadvertently teach them how to resolve conflict. But what we often do as parents, and this has been proven time and time again, what we often do as parents is we don't talk about those subjects. School doesn't talk about those subjects. And so they get into a community or a school where there's angst and there's fighting or there's bullying or name calling, and they have no idea what to do.
Yep.
And if a student doesn't know what to do, your reaction is 10 times worse. If I call you a name and you have no idea what to do, you're going to stammer and stutter and blurt out the first thing that comes into your mind. And now you're going to get bullied even worse. So a big part of what I do at a school is we'll jump in and, one, I tell a little bit of my story, and I'll give you that in a moment. But the other thing we do is just teach responses. So if you know how to respond in any situation, you're not going to have a knee-jerk reaction and you're not going to make it worse. But in our sort of a little bit more PC society, we sort of don't like a lot of the techniques that actually have been proven to work for the last 50 years. But my counselor was not PC at all. She got me inside. She said, Jonny, why do you think you get bullied so much? I said, it's because I've got this big mole on the side of my face. I had these big glasses. I had really bad acne, second shortest kid in my year group, chronic dyslexia. To this day, I have the reading ability of about a 12-year-old. And so if someone poked fun at me, that really hurt because I was already sensitive. An analogy I'll give in a school often is like, imagine if you're growing up and one of your friends has a bruise. For some reason, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, it's funny to poke the bruise because you see this massive reaction. You don't have a lot of energy output, but you see this huge reaction. And that's all the bruises are sensitive skin. And so what happens with us sometimes emotionally is we get a little bit emotionally sensitive in certain areas, and people pick up on that. And if I can hassle you, if I can call you mole man, four eyes, short stuff, stupid, dumb, whatever, and that's an issue for you, you're going to react. They're going to feel powerful, and then you're going to end up blurting out something or saying something stupid or just looking like an idiot. So long story short, I don't want to butcher the story, but the counselor got me aside. She said, hey, she grabbed out a piece of paper. At the top left, she wrote down things I can change. At the top right, she wrote down things I can't change, but need to change the way I think about them. And one by one, she said, what's the issues? Why do you get bullied? And I said, oh, because my disabilities. And she said, that's interesting, Jonny, because I know a lot of students that have a lot of disabilities and they never get bullied.
Hey, okay.
But I think the reason you get bullied is because you're hypersensitive. And obviously me, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But she got this piece of paper out, went through them one by one. She said, what's the first one? Said, my mole. She goes, Jonny, when you get older, you can get that cut out if you want to. And I did. When I left high school, got that one cut out, a couple of other ones. Funny thing was, I got home, 5 brothers, 3 of them didn't even realize it was gone for weeks. In other words, it was a big issue in my mind. But the only reason I got hassled for it is because I was insecure about it. So went through the next one. What's the next one? I said, my glasses. She said, Jonny, when you get older, you can get contacts. When I joined the military, they paid for my laser eye surgery, got great vision now. Went to my next one. She didn't what's another one? I said, oh, got bad skin, pimples, 50% of students will get that at some point in their life. She said, Jonny, that's to do with an overinflation of oil in your bloodstream. That's bad now. But when you get older, it will act like an actual moisturizer and you'll actually end up looking younger as you get older. So I tell a lot of audiences, you probably haven't met me before, but I'm actually 68 years old.
No, yeah, you definitely said you were 40 before, so you've increased your age by 28 years already.
I'm bringing it back to the joke ones. But mate, one by one, I'll give you 2 more, but she went through me being short. She said, hey, you can't change that. But did you know short people end up living longer, statistically? And so one by one, she went through all these things I got bullied about, and she helped me categorize them. And in a peaceful, non-emotional state, categorize them and look at the positives. Hey, was that going to change in the future? Well, just next time someone hassles you, tell yourself it's going to change in the future. If it's not, maybe it's something you just need to change your mind about. I mean, case in point, got hassled for not being able to read half my life. But she said, hey, people that can't read or write very well, especially dyslexics, often end up being better verbal communicators. Have you thought about joining the speech team or the debating team? I end up doing a lot of these things that I end up absolutely enjoying and loving. And looking back over life thinking, oh, there's a reason I wasn't good at these things. Those were closed doors. There's only a couple of things I'm good at. Those are the doors I'm meant to walk through. They're actually a blessing if you look at them the right way. And the reason I share that whole story is I went to her for an hour. She wasn't very PC at all. She basically said, what are you getting insulted about? Let's, do some case studies and I'm going to insult you. What would you say back?
Yeah.
And for 1 hour we did that. And the funny thing was 2 weeks into it, brand new school, got bullied about the exact same things again, but yet ever since I've never reacted, the bullying almost instantaneously goes away. And I remember sharing my story, and this is both in person and online, by the way. And I remember sharing my story with a guy called Brooks Stems, and he ended up saying that 95% of bullying or insults will stop after 3 times of the person not reacting or responding. 95% of the times. So if you've got a kid that's getting bullied, if you're a parent or even a teacher that's got kids getting bullied in person especially, teach them how to not respond or not react, I should say. But the key to not reacting is trying to become secure in your insecurities. And one of the best exercises you can do, one of the fastest ones, is that one I just told you about. Categorize, non-emotive, go through them together. Is there positives? So you can really get that down in your spirit so you really don't react. Funny thing though, I did a lot of work with the eSafety Commission for about 3-4 years. They found out that almost the exact same statistic online. 96% of bullying stops within 3 times of the person not reacting or responding. What we say at eSafety, if someone bullies you online, if it's through a video game, like through chat, that's where half the chat happens these days. Under age of 16, nearly half the chat happens on video games, not social media. If it happens on social media, if it's on Google, if you post it on something, if there's anything that someone's done to affect your online reputation or bully you directly, if you haven't responded to it 3 times, you take a screenshot and you send it into esafety.gov.au. And you can just type in report bullying, eSafety, if you're in Australia. It'll come straight up. They'll ask you for the screenshot. And in a lot of cases, the person will get a warning. And in a lot of cases, their account will get shut down. Go
So,
tell them we're the only country in the world that that has that sort of power and authority. We're the only country in the world that has an e-safety commission. It's
Wow.
pretty cool.
Yeah, no, there's some really, that's a really great initiative. I really like that. And it's an interesting statistic too, Johnny, that I'll delve into a couple of things that you mentioned just there,
Yeah.
but that's an interesting statistic, I think, just because, especially I think the way bullying, especially online bullying, is portrayed in the media, and also, you know, it's often not glorified, but it's reported. We have TV shows and movies and all that sort of stuff where bullying takes part in those shows and those movies, and it's often not reported like that. 96% is the overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority of times, after 3 times, it's gonna stop.
Yeah. Mate,
it doesn't always happen, does it? But most of the time it
95, 96, exactly. And then what I usually tell people is just like your safety, if it doesn't stop on that last 4%, that's when you report it online. If it doesn't stop after 3 times in school, that's when you tell the person hey, I've let this fly 3 times now. If you do it again, I'm going to talk to a teacher. And so when the student does go to an authority, they've actually got evidence and, history of it happening multiple times. But often what we do, whether it's on TV or the media or sometimes oversensitive teachers, we're telling these kids, if anyone insults you, go tell them straight away, which often actually ends up making the situation way worse because it was a one-off. And people label everything with bullying. But the definition of bullying, at least how we have it in Australia, is targeted, ongoing, aggressive behavior. Okay, so it has to be targeted. In other words, you couldn't just offend the person. Like, in other words, if I offend you right now and you clap back, that is not bullying. That's you reacting to something I've said that offended you. Okay, that might be a conflict, but that is not bullying. Bullying is when it's targeted. In other words, you didn't do anything to do it. That's why the vast majority, nearly 80% of all bullying, 84% I think it is, of bullying usually relates to your sexuality, your appearance, or disability.
Okay.
Right, so that's the vast majority of bullying. That's proper bullying. Like, you didn't say anything, you didn't do anything, your being just offended the person. So sometimes what a school will do is hey, come and talk to us about bullying, and then you meet a couple of students, end up unpacking it, and you go, oh man, this isn't bullying. This is conflict resolution. This kid hasn't learned how to, shut his mouth or stop gnawing or stop tapping the desk next to this kid that's trying to learn, and he's reacting. He's not bullying. Because if that stopped, that would stop. So I actually have a bullying poster, and again, I'll give it to you, and you can link it to the teachers or parents, and it literally just asks the question did you do anything to offend them? If it's yes, have you asked to apologize? Have you apologized? Okay, no, you haven't done anything. And then it just slowly brings you down the list to ensure that it is actually bullying. But in most cases, it's actually not, mate. It's a word people throw on nearly anything, and it actually makes the situation way worse. Because, I mean, if you were taught that you were never meant to be bullied, and in most cases, people don't even know the definition. If you were taught that you're never meant to be insulted, in other words, you're special, you're never meant to be insulted, and then you go to school with me and I insult you, are you going to react?
Yeah.
Probably 10 times more, right?
Yeah.
Because you think I'm special. That's never meant to happen. And this is why I've gotten asked to speak at some bullying conferences, and I won't say the name, but some agencies believe that there should be absolutely no bullying in schools whatsoever. And I sit there going, I don't think this is actually going to build the resilience in our young people, telling people that. Because what you're telling people is that you should never be insulted or offended. And what the realities are is that even if you went to a perfect school and you never got insulted, no one ever hassled anyone, it was like a nirvana/heaven. When you go to the workforce, Australia is the 3rd worst workforce for bullying in the entire world.
Yeah. Okay.
So in other words, are we preparing our young people for a long-term win? Are we preparing our young people for the workforce if we're telling them no one should have been insulted, no one should have bullied?
Essentially, if they're not exposed to it in school, at some point when they're in the workforce, they're going to be exposed to it. So
100%. Yeah. You're going to get exposed to it. So why not do some resilient courses? Why not learn how to respond, how to debrief, de-escalate situations if someone insults you? Like,
Yeah.
this is stuff we should be teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're
Conflict
100%
resolution.
right.
Yeah.
I agree that it does need to be taught, I think, and yeah, and correctly identified as well. And we need to be building up probably resilience in our kids now, while they're in school, so they can deal with those issues if they do come up appropriately. And but just on that as well, Jonny, you
Yeah.
mentioned a while ago, you mentioned about getting around the dinner table. That's one thing that we do as a family at home is like
Yeah, cool.
we will often sit. We always try and have meal times together, and the
Yeah.
busyness of life, and it doesn't always happen. But
Yeah.
one thing we always, and my kids are a bit younger, so I don't. It's not as an in-depth conversation as it would be with a teenager. But we always ask each other, what was your favorite part of the day, or
Yeah, nice.
and it's that real key to building that connection, I think, with your kids. And they're not going to, if you don't have that connection, I don't think they're going to come
Yep.
to you with those issues if they do arise. So I think that's a really good thing, good strategy that you mentioned, is to try and have those meal times together.
Yeah, and then take it a step further, mate, and just say, like what I said to my wife every night, what's the best thing, what's the worst thing?
Yeah.
So now you've got a conversation where it's not just what's the best thing that happened. Like we're open as a family about, I had a crappy day, this person annoyed me, or traffic annoyed me. And you're being your honest, authentic, real self. Yeah. Thanks, mate. I mean, you summarized half the stuff I said 10 times better than me. You should be a speaker.
Well, somewhat, just not on the same topics as what you do so well, Jonny. So no, thank you. That was very kind of you to say. Yeah. Before you go, Jonny, you've been generous with your time, mate. I really appreciate it. And look, Jonny, you speak to students, parents, you speak in the corporate sector. You've been partnered with, some organisations like Burn Bright and Generation Next. You've done some incredible things in your career. You're currently doing some incredible work as well. One thing I'd like to ask you though is what's next for Jonny Shannon? Because you've done so much already. I don't know. I'm trying to think what's next for Jonny. He's done everything, surely.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that a lot. Sometimes I think I haven't done enough. Mate, I'm changing gears a little bit. I'm trying to get into doing a lot more video stuff. I've just learned, whether it's bullying or anything. I mean, last week there was like 4 schools, and it was just one of those things where you go, I don't have enough time to get some pretty basic messages across all schools. So I'm trying to change gears a little bit and do a lot more video stuff, especially with bullying, online safety. So I put a website together. It's cybersafe.com.au. And there's 1 or 2 videos there at the moment. I'm going to be doing a 10-part series where you as a parent, the whole thing's absolutely free, but you as a parent or you as a student can just sign up, and then you get 10 short courses. It asks you a bunch of questions at the end, and we go through things like bullying, how to respond. We go through sexting, screen time addiction, AI, hacking. I mean, there's some scary stats out there, man. I mean, I'm not going to open up a whole bunch of other topics because I'll just keep.
Yeah.
But ideally, 10-part course, they get to the very end, they get their CyberSafe certificate, and at least as a parent, both for the parents themselves, but also for the kids, you can go, okay, my kid knows a base level of the most common threats and attacks. 80% of it's usually the 10 things. The other 20% would take you too long to go down those rabbit holes. But so really, really keen for that, and then also just pursuing sponsorships, so I can speak in some schools that can't afford me to come in, but trying to figure out how to make that more available.
Yep.
So yeah, exciting, mate. It's an exciting time, and obviously, ideally, to spend a lot more time with family.
Yeah, no, that's always key, isn't it? Like to get that time with, especially when your kids are young as well. You want to spend as much time, like you've already alluded to. Get that constant reminder. 75% of that time. That's
By the time
I hadn't heard that before. So 12 by 12, that's crazy stat. So speaking of being a parent, we know you're a dad, but one thing that I'm going to start asking the guests that we have on the podcast from now. So you'll be the first trial run, Jonny. So I got this will be the first guest that I've asked this question. But is there one thing in your particular parenting journey right now, Jonny, that maybe you've still struggled with, or perhaps you've overcome something that you've struggled with, and maybe give our listeners some useful tips if there is something that you've overcome in that?
What's the question, mate? I think I definitely don't think it's a testimony, because I think I'm still doing the test, so I'm definitely still struggling with it. But one thing would be I've always ran my own businesses, and I have for the last like 15, 20 years. So I'm used to being the person that, the last thing goes to. If something doesn't work, it goes to the top. And so as an employee, I could have managed it a lot better, but as a boss, I just haven't managed my time well. Not when it comes to, even when it comes to talks. I travel a lot. Like, I joke at the start where I say I've been all around Australia 178 times, but the flip side is the reality of that is that you're away from home a lot. You're away from your kids a lot, your family. Like, there are very few people that can do this job long term. Average speaker lasts 18 months.
Wow.
So yeah, most speakers can't. And so you've got to figure out how to manage your time really well and have those open conversations that I wish I probably had earlier with, with my wife and even kids, where it comes to, hey, I'm away maybe one night a week, but it's not going to be more than two. It'll be one night a week consistently. And try to figure out how to get home every night at 4 or 5 o'clock, not sometimes I get work obsessed and stay until like 7, 8 o'clock. And then you haven't seen your kid tonight, and then it has a day since you've seen your kids. So my heroes, I'm rambling now, but my heroes have changed very dramatically. I used to be like a Elon Musk type, what a legend, until you realize that he worked 18, 20 hours a day and barely sees his kids. And so I switch around to a couple of my real big heroes. One, Richard Branson, works 2 hours a day. And the other one is a local guy that I actually know who he said, when I asked him what success was, he said, is dropping my kid up and picking him up from school every day. As in, like, I'll drop my kid off, I'll go to work, and I'm going to finish in time to pick him up. And I just love that as a definition of success, going, yeah, me as a dad, I need to refigure what success is. I don't need any more necessarily cash, but I think no one looks back and goes, oh, I wish I made more money. But they do look back and go, I wish I spent more time with my kid. Like,
yeah. So is that one thing you can't get back, isn't it, Tom? So
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's a really good tip, and thank you for being so honest in that, Jonny. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today, mate. I really appreciate your insight. Your journey is, it's incredible, and I encourage people, if they haven't heard of you, that are listening to this, definitely go and look into Jonny Shannon. He's doing some amazing stuff. If you're a teacher listening to this, get him into your school, because he's doing some incredible things, and we'll leave some of those links that we've mentioned throughout today's episode in the episode description. So and especially to that online course that you mentioned as well, Jonny, just a second ago, that you're currently in development, or is it's up
in development? I'm almost like a TV series. Like, I did a pilot one to see if it works very well, and then so now I'm starting to do the other 9 parts. But hey, look, if it's May now, so it'll probably be done in about 6 to 8 weeks.
Beautiful. Well, let us know when it is done, and we'll definitely be sharing it with our audiences as well. So we really appreciate your time, mate, and we also wish you all the best for the rest of the year. And if you ever are in Adelaide, if you're ever in South Australia, please feel free to reach out to us at Encounter Youth. We would love to speak with you again.
I'd love to speak to you guys again too. Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Jonny. Thanks, mate. Take care. Well, that's it for today's episode of Uncharted Parenting. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. We love to hear from all of our listeners, so if you have any questions that you would like us to answer here on the podcast, we want to hear from you. Send those questions in to us, and we will be answering them right here on the pod. Please send them in to podcast@encounteryouth.com.au. That's podcast@encounteryouth.com.au. Uncharted Parenting is now also on YouTube, so head on over and subscribe to our channel at Encounter Youth AU. And remember, wherever you listen to your podcasts, give us a follow, subscribe, send us a review, send in those questions by the bucket load, and remember, there's no map for parenting. You enter uncharted waters every single day, but there is a way forward. You're doing an amazing job, and we're here with you on that journey. We have some more amazing episodes and guests coming your way soon. Until next time, goodbye for now.